Welcome to the fifth in a series of CLE webinars. Today's topic is negotiating from a position of strength. We'll be talking with Felicia Farber, who's a lawyer, arbitrator, and mediator, although probably best known for being the crying plaintiff in episode 1 in season 1 of Mock Civil Mediations and the strong, very effective mediator in episode 2. Lawrence Eichen is a litigation attorney, mediator, professional speaker, although he's best known for being Lawrence of Tech Time with Lawrence and Carl, which is now the #1 rated tech show of all mediator associations. I'd also like to mention that he has a free giveaway called Top 10 Keys to Negotiate from Strength, which you can get at www.firstclassspeaking.com. So welcome to the mediation.
Good morning, Carl.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so when I first read this topic, I must admit I did not understand it because negotiating from a position of strength, and I'm thinking, well, where does a mediator come into this? Because normally I think of negotiating as the parties negotiate in the mediation. Maybe the lawyers mediate or negotiate on behalf of their clients in mediation. But Felicia, how does a mediator negotiate in a mediation?
Well, to me, mediators need to be the ultimate negotiators because each side is only worried about their positions and they're advocating for themselves, whereas mediators have to work with everyone in the room, or these days on Zoom, and somehow bring the opposing sides together. So much of what we do as mediators requires good negotiating skills. And I believe that the stronger negotiating skills you have, the more successful you'll be as a mediator and the better results that you'll attain. The foundation of good negotiation is good communication, and we need to use those skills to not only facilitate, but to influence and to persuade. And mediation and negotiation share many of the same goals: preserve relationships, find mutually acceptable solutions, arrive at best possible outcomes, and maintain principles of fairness. So just like if you're going to be an effective coach, you've got to know how the game is played. And a mediator who's skilled in negotiation will be the best suited to navigate the parties through the process because they'll be able to recognize the different negotiating strategies, tactics, and styles of the participants and help them shift from their let's fight litigation mode to a collaborative mindset.
So are you saying in any way that the mediator is negotiating on behalf of one of the parties or negotiating in favor of a resolution? What is it exactly that
the latter, and using all of those skills combined to help the parties. And part of that is recognizing what they're doing, what negotiating tactics they're using, and then, facilitating that, and we'll get into those elements a little bit later.
Okay, Lawrence?
Yeah, I would certainly agree with everything that Felicia has just said. And I would stress, to me, when you ask that question, it's all about communication skills when you're a mediator trying to negotiate with two parties. And, you're going to be tested on your negotiation skills because there's going to be many times in a emotionally charged mediation where, there's going to get some attitudes, some anger, some frustration. One side is going to seem very unreasonable, difficult. So constantly during the course of a mediation, as a good negotiator, you will be able to use your communication skills to, overcome this party resistance. Maybe it's both parties, maybe it's one party, but your goal at all times as the mediator is thinking about getting the parties to agree, right? To get them to get to yes, to sign that document. And so if you're acting as this mediator, you've got to constantly be negotiating in a way, a subtle way. And I would make the distinction, it's definitely going to be more subtle than when you're negotiating as an attorney on behalf of your client, perhaps, right? But in a mediation context, you're negotiating, you're just being very subtle about how you're trying to shift people's positions sometimes into something that can be workable for both parties. So I agree with Felicia 100%. It's about using your negotiation skills at all times. And the better you are as a negotiator in general, whether you're coming from a litigation background, like which I came from and still do, or whether you're just a full-time mediator, but the better your skill set is, your communication skills, your interpersonal skills, the better you're going to be at mediation.
Many years ago, I heard Mary Ann Stokes present at a conference, and she said that mediators are manipulators. And I was slightly appalled, I thought, because I was rather young at the time, relatively young. And I thought, well, gee, we don't manipulate people. But then I came to understand from Mary Ann that she wasn't talking about manipulating to reach a certain end, a specific end, her end, but manipulating to keep the parties in the negotiation or in the mediation to reach the end that whatever they came up with. Do you think we as mediators do that?
If you're asking me, Paul, I could tell you, yes, but here's the caveat I would throw in. I think sometimes when we hear the word manipulation, there's a negative connotation to it. And I think maybe that's why there's a little bit of a hesitancy to say, yeah, we manipulate, because usually manipulation is not being very honest, maybe, and all this stuff that we think in a negative sense. But if you think of it as positive manipulation, maybe there's a good word for that, influence, or subtle influencing. Yes, as a good mediator, if you have one party who's standing there like this during the mediation, and you can somehow work with this person and use subtle strategies and techniques to get them to open up and be amenable to compromising, is that manipulation, or is that, influence? Call it whatever you want to call it. I would say, yes, there's a level of positive manipulation going on, I think, from my experience, to get parties to come to an agreement. So if I have to go under the heading of manipulation, yes, I'll call it manipulation, but I'll call it positive manipulation.
So you would agree with this definition then? The skillful handling, control, or using of something or someone. The skillful handling, controlling, or using of something or someone.
Well, control bothers me a little bit, because I don't think I'm trying to control them. I think I'm trying to get them enlightened. And I think I'd agree with everything except control, because you know why? Because ultimately they have to agree, right? It's a voluntary decision on their part. So if I'm going to be manipulating in a negative way and they sign the dotted line, but they really didn't want to sign it, it's not going to have a long-term effect the way it should. So I would just take out the concept of controlling as much as it is, yes, skillful handling, all that I agree with. But ultimately, I'm very, very intense about making sure that both parties have no pressure or coercion on them, and that they are voluntarily, as that word really means, voluntarily, knowingly, intelligently deciding this is what they want to do. As long as they have that mindset, I'm fine with it.
Felicia, any thoughts?
Well, I'll jump in there. Yeah. So I could see, taking that word control and putting it in the context of maintaining control over the mediation process by providing that fair forum for the parties, making sure that their voices, their beliefs, their preferences are heard, and steering them along, guiding them through the process. Obviously, that word manipulate is more, I would use manage, to get them to where you want to go, manage their emotions. So, here we are manipulating these words so that they fit into to what we're doing in a positive connotation.
So When we talk about negotiate from a position of strength, I assume that doesn't mean just that you have a strong position, that you're more likely to win, as opposed to, well, I have a weak position, then I'm negotiating not from a position of strength. You do it the same whether you're weak or strong. Am I reading that properly?
Do you
Yeah,
want me to continue with this or Lawrence?
Go ahead, Felicia.
Okay. So again, we're going to start off. You have to have the requisite skills in order to be a good, strong, effective negotiator. And that starts with the good communication that we were talking about. And effective communication skills are both your strong listening skills and your verbal ability, and also being able to understand and recognize nonverbal elements as well. And this you have to understand as a negotiator that the single most important way to lead the negotiation is to ask questions. So knowledge is your source of power in any negotiation, and you need to get all of the information that you can at the outset, and that will give you the clarity and confidence to proceed in the best fashion. Now, most people don't take the time to ask open questions and underside the others.
I was just asking about that one, whether it's a position of strength or,
Okay. So,
yeah. So let me come back to that in a minute.
okay.
Lawrence, you.
Yeah, to answer to your point, Carl, no, it does not mean that you're negotiating from the stronger position. Many times, just in.
Oh, I'm sorry if I misunderstood that. Okay.
Yeah, if I'm negotiating, for instance, in a criminal matter, I may have a client who's guilty, right? And the facts and the law are against him. So I certainly don't have a strong position when I'm going into court. Or if it's a civil matter and my client owes the money and it's clear that he does, I'm not in the position of strength, right? If you think of it from a bargaining position, but that doesn't mean I can't still negotiate from strength. And so what I mean when I say negotiate from strength, that means being committed, having that clarity of what it is I'm actually seeking beforehand, really being clear about that. Being confident in what I'm seeking, right? And confidence, I think of confidence as a four-legged bar stool, knowledge, preparation, belief, and experience. Those to me are the four legs of confidence. And each one of those, other than experience, I mean, knowledge is I should be able to be knowledgeable about what it is that I'm negotiating for, right? Shame on me if I don't have the knowledge of my case or my facts. My preparation is all in my control. Even if I don't have a strong case, I have to be prepared. That's in my control. And belief, I have to believe in what I'm asking for, right? I've got to be in a position where I have to sound it, right? Now, experience, yes, that's going to help. There's no doubt about it. But that doesn't mean even without experience, you can't negotiate from a position of strength, because I would just say you can sit on a three-legged bar stool, right? Not a four-legged one with one broken, but just a three-leg. So you can still be confident without the experience, but definitely experience helps for sure. I'm not going to lie about that. But the point is that this is part of negotiating from strength. And then having courage is another factor, all right? Because when we're negotiating, sometimes we're doing things that have to take us out of our comfort zone. I have to ask for something that might be uncomfortable for me to ask for, or I might have to, do it in a slightly different way, or ask for help before I even get into the negotiation. All of these things deal with, fears and doubts that can creep up in the context of a negotiation. So courage is a component of negotiating from strength, having the courage to do what's necessary to overcome your personal fears or doubts, and be able to ask for what you want in the way you want to ask for it. And then having compassion and calmness. Those are the other two factors that I believe go to negotiating from strength. Because when we touched on this earlier, when you're talking to people and negotiating, right, everybody's different. And the last thing you want to do is get triggered by somebody's attitude that maybe takes you off your game. If you can stay in a position of compassion for whoever you're negotiating with, not get triggered, compassion is a position of strength. Just think about it. When you have compassion for other people, you're usually in a position of strength. You're not being triggered. And the same thing with calmness when it comes to objections, right? Because negotiation does not start until the first no. That's when negotiation starts, right? So when you get that objection or you get that pushback, whether it's a mediation where the other party says no, or whether it's negotiating, adversarially for a client, real negotiation doesn't start until no. And that's when you got to be calm and present, what you think is your position that meets that objection, and being able to show somebody and redirect them to the solution, right? People need to be taken down a solution that seems reasonable and fair and all that stuff. Much more stronger to be calm doing that than being, reactive and anxious or fearful that you're not going to get the deal. So just tying this back into your original question, Carl, this is how I would say you negotiate from strength. Even if your position is not a strong position, you can still negotiate from strength as best as possible under the circumstances if you adhere to those 5 C's that I've been talking about, commitment, confidence, courage, compassion, calmness. Those are things that you can focus on that would help you negotiate from strength.
Felicia?
Yeah, so again, you don't always have to have the best, the best case to be able to be a strong negotiator. And how I started off saying before was that if you have the requisite knowledge and skills, then you are best equipped in order to have, the best negotiated outcome. So one of those things you have to understand is really your ability to ask questions and get the information that you need, because if you don't understand the other side's goals, interests, and needs, that's going to be very difficult for you to get them to move where you want. You have to understand what is driving the other side. So you need to be able to come in and ask, the first thing is information gathering. You need to develop a strong strategic negotiation plan, and that will make you strong no matter the subjective or merits of your case. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about your strength as a negotiator. So you want to use your interpersonal skills, because there is no substitute for social skills in a negotiation. That is the human side of negotiation. So you need to establish rapport and show empathy and develop trust. You need to be likable and pleasant, no matter what the situation is. Always act professionally, demonstrate respect for the other side. And then when you go through, you're always gaining new information, learning about the other side's interests. And you want to do it open-ended, which are similar to mediator skills, which are, tell me your thoughts on that. What would you like to happen today? Can you describe what you want in this deal? So the more you learn, the more knowledge you have, and that is power. So you don't want to just also know about their interests. You want to know, what are their core interests? What's most important to them? What are their priorities? And, once you get that, you can find what else is critical, and you can sort of rank them, and that will help you in formulating your plan of clarifying what their positions are ahead of time before you even walk in there, exploring options, problem solving, developing an offer concession strategy. Before you walk in the door, you need to have an idea of where you're going to go, set your own goals. What are they? Know your leverage, know theirs. There are so many factors that go in, so that way you are starting off strong.
Okay. One of the most popular books that is given out in 40-hour divorce courses, just about any negotiation course, is Getting to Yes. And Getting to Yes is really a book about negotiation, but it seems as though just about every mediator uses the same techniques. Let me just put it up for a moment so you can look at some of the factors. And I'd like to know whether you use these factors, these things, and whether you find them useful in your mediations negotiations.
Paul, before you put that up, can I just interject one little thought that popped into my head? Because
Yes.
both Felicia and I have mentioned preparation, and I think that gets, it's always mentioned, right, in terms of negotiating, preparing. But, what I have found over the years in terms of negotiating from a position of strength, preparation is not just about reading the file, you know, there's some extra steps along the way that I have found work when it comes to negotiating. And that's actually saying your arguments out loud to yourself, out loud. Maybe I personally will drive in the car sometimes. Looks like I'm on the cell phone, but I'm actually practicing what I'm saying. Because to me, preparation, I don't want to hear my argument the first time when I'm in the negotiation, because sometimes it doesn't come out so good. And so preparation, I might have read the file and know it, but it's only for me after I've said it a few times and maybe even bounced it off of other people and made that argument that I want to make. After rehearsing that in a way, then when I actually say it at game time, it comes out a lot better. And I have found that when I haven't had the time to do that, or I skimped on the preparation, quite frankly, I watched the Ranger game instead of actually practice that negotiation doesn't come out as effective because it's not going that extra mile. And I think preparation is the easiest part of negotiation to skimp on, but it's the one area that is so in a person's control that can easily separate themselves and making a better negotiation when they have really done that extra legwork in preparation, whether you're mediating or whether you're negotiating. Preparation is just the key. There's just no getting around it. And I just didn't want to leave that topic without kind of saying that, because it gets glossed over. Oh, preparation, sure, look at the file. But what does that really mean in terms of negotiating when you have to speak and present a position? To me, it means rehearsing, practicing, saying it so that it comes out like an actor who says a line and you believe them. They've rehearsed that line hundreds of times and it sounds so authentic. You want to sound that same way when you're making your case. You don't want to think about your argument. You want to know it so well that you can just say it and it's convincing. And that just there's no getting around that.
You ever role play in your head?
Yeah, in a way I do. I mean, I kind of like sometimes, not too much. I think I'm not that neurotic about it, but I do practice what I would say if they say this. Like if I kind of know what they're going to say, I kind of like practice in a way. I know this is good. I know they're going to say this. Usually by the time you're getting into the negotiation, you kind of have a general sense of what the other side's going to say. So yeah, now I'm going to rehearse what I want to say on that point. I just want to know it cold is my point. And I'd rather not be thinking about it. And the last thing I want to do is drive home back to the office or drive home now in this pandemic going, oh man, I wish I said that, right? And we often do that. And I feel that's usually a result of not doing that, rehearsing that preparation where you know it cold. I find that's usually the result.
Actually, that's one of the reasons people don't like negotiation, because they don't want to beat themselves up after the fact and have those doubts. Like, did I give too much away? Could I have done better? Was that good? But that same preparation that Lawrence is talking about, I mean, I used when I did trial work for years. I mean, I'm sure my husband can still recite some of my opening statements and closing statements. Always good to say these things out loud. But it is hard to role play with yourself in negotiation. But that's where, I mentioned you're exploring your options and your offer concession strategies in advance. So if you have a roadmap ahead of time, and then you know what you're going to do, and you're probably, Carl, about to put up getting to yes, which goes heavily into BATNA, your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And that's one of the things that in this preparation that I was mentioning, you are considering what is yours and what is theirs also. So that's extremely important in knowing what is your best alternative to the agreement that you're looking for there. So when you're going to reject theirs and walk away if you have an alternative that could be better. So let's let you get going with that.
Let's go to that. Okay. So this is from Getting to Yes, which has been around for a very long time. Then that's why there's et al., because there are subsequent authors who have added to it, modified it, etc. And here are the main points that are made in it. It's separate people from the problem, focus on interests, not positions, options for mutual gain, using objective criteria, develop a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement, be prepared, which we've talked about quite a bit, rank order priorities, make first offer and proposals. See, this is sort of the main parts of the book. Obviously, go into it in great detail. Do you find that you do these kinds of things routinely in a
Yes.
mediation? Yes. Okay. How about you, Lawrence?
Yes, for sure. In a mediation, I mean, the number one thing that a lot of people who are going into mediation, right, are trying to avoid the cost of litigation, right? So always having that as a clear win-win proposition for both parties to avoid litigation, avoid the time, the energy, the money, right? If there's children involved, what's in the best interest of the kids to resolve this as fast as possible, amicably. So all of those are shared interests. And I think in any mediation, a good mediator is going to really be clear about that. Either certainly at the outset, I would almost like in the opening of a mediation, almost be kind of highlighting this, almost like we can all agree on these are the benefits of mediation. And then I think as a mediation goes forward and if you're hitting bumps in the road and resistance, and it looks a little sketchy whether or not this is going to go forward, to sort of, again, bring these factors to the forefront to get the parties to sort of recognize again, yes, this is the benefit of doing this. And so, yes, to answer your question with getting to yes, I'm going to give you a yes. Yes, it is very important to have shared interests. You want to make it a win-win outcome. And I would even throw this outside of mediation in negotiating, because I know people listening on the call, or I'm sure are also not just mediators, but attorneys. It's also coming to a win-win proposition that if you can negotiate in a way that shows your adversary that they win here too, and you can in advance be able to have some good points to make how they get something. I'll give you just an example. In a criminal case that I handled recently, it's telling the prosecutor, look, you're getting a conviction, you're not getting, this particular conviction that you're seeking for, but you're still getting my client. He's going to plead guilty. He's still going to lose, he's going to be on probation, so there's a lot of things you can still say to show the other side you're still winning here, and the same thing on a civil case, right? You're still getting your money back. Okay, you're not getting it in a lump sum in 30 days, but you're getting all your money back and you're getting done with the litigation and you don't have to chase him down. And he's going to, commit to this agreement because he can make the payments on a monthly basis as opposed to when you want it right now. So there's ways both in mediation and in regular negotiation that you can present shared interest, win-win, and it's a great tactic. And so, yes, again, I'm going yes. That's my final answer.
Yes. Okay. So you've gotten past no, right?
I have the one-word response, but I have a lot to say on this too. I don't know how much time you want to spend on this.
Well, start.
Well, in that strategic plan that I mentioned that, you have right from the start, you are incorporating so many of those factors that you just put up from getting to yes, and then you employ them and weave them into the process, into the negotiating process as it goes along. One of the most important things you can do, again, I mentioned asking questions, is you are really trying to delve into those underlying interests of the parties. And so that's where you're listening, using your listening skills, and then you hear the response and then you follow up to that. So you're taking it steps further. So you want to get the why, you want to get the why not. And those are so important into focusing on the problem and separating the case from the people, because it's very hard when you hear a response that you may not like, not to shoot the messenger and to go after the person who's delivering that. So you need to attack the problem, and that's where the mediator's negotiating skills come in to help the parties focus on their common interests on resolving the problem and not making it personal, because the emotional state of the parties is such a big factor in any type of dispute.
Have you, Felicia, become a significantly better mediator or negotiator over time?
Yeah, of course, there's no substitute for practice. The more you do anything, the better you get at it. So, yeah, I've been mediating for 17 years, arbitrating, still negotiating, representing people in court. And I could tell you that, you know, putting all of this together makes you stronger. You know, you have to be more articulate, and you have to really use those verbal and nonverbal communication skills. We haven't even gotten into the nonverbal aspects, but so much of what you do is observing, watching, listening the other parties. You're not in a courtroom alone. You're not at the negotiating table or the mediation table alone. There's other people there. That's what makes it difficult. And that's how you have to learn how to, using that word, manipulate or manage or maintain the process and steer it to where you want it to go. Right? As a negotiator, you want to get that outcome where you want. As the mediator, you want to help the parties get to an acceptable outcome. In court, you want to win. Wherever you are, you've got to use those skills accordingly.
Lawrence, how much have you improved over time?
Oh, like a fine bottle of wine, Carl.
We're not getting into aging here.
I think really, to be fair, I think as I've grown as a person, quite frankly, it sounds a little corny. I think I've become a better attorney and a better negotiator because just on the topic of, we were talking about being compassionate, right? I can know early on in my career, I did not like, if somebody treated me in a way that I felt was wrong, I'm not accustomed to like being good with that. You know, it's like, you know, I come from a very athletic background, so I'm always playing sports, and, you know, if some guy hits you the wrong way, you know, or, you know, takes a cheap shot, you know, you go back after that guy. Right. And so that's my mentality. And I think over time, though, what I've learned as a negotiator is that it goes back to that compassion, calm concept. When I can just be compassionate for somebody who says something maybe, you know, inappropriate, maybe with an attitude, maybe condescending or something that I don't deserve, you know, if I just have compassion for that person and recognize, hey, you know what, I've had bad days. I've maybe treated people maybe the wrong way sometimes, and I didn't intend to. So it's not like I'm shaming anybody, but it's more like just saying to somebody sometimes, hey, can we, you know, hold on a second, you know, I feel like we're getting off to the wrong foot here. I feel like you're saying something to me in a way that it just doesn't sound right to me. I don't think I've said anything that would make you talk to me in the way that you've talked to. Let's start this over. We both want to negotiate and work something out. So it's having a little bit more maturity, quite frankly, to handle some of the extraneous comments that you can get in litigating that has made me a better negotiator litigating. And in mediation, it's really made me a much better mediator too, because when I see parties that have a lot going on and it's very emotional and they're upset and they're angry, having learned about myself internally, what makes me tick and how I respond to situations, and doing a lot of hard work internally on myself has made me be able to be, you know, sympathetic to other people's situations much better and tune in to what they're feeling so that I can, you know, give them that feeling that, hey, I understand where they're coming from. I get it. And then try to help them through that and make them recognize that, you know, resolving this is really the best way, not fighting about it, not holding onto the grudges, not letting your emotions dictate your objectivity. So all of that has helped really to become a better mediator or negotiator.
So,
Now, what you're saying, at least I hear you saying, you can have a soft demeanor and still be negotiating from a position of strength.
100%.
Right?
yeah.
In a sense, wouldn't you really say that helps?
Yeah, that's staying in that position of calm that I talk about, right? Calm is not weak. Calm is strong.
Being calm, cool, confident. Yeah, you are the model of the way the negotiation should proceed and how everybody should conduct themselves. And that also shows that you have control over yourself, control over the process. Really important. And I think that with Lawrence bringing up a personal situation that he had, this is a good time to get into these skits that Lawrence and I have prepared on bad communication and good communication, because all these skills that we're talking about in the courtroom, at the negotiating table, at mediation, can be used. They're transferable to your personal life as well. You know, I always say that I think what attracted me into the mediation field years ago is that I had twins, you know, and I was coach and referee and mom, and always trying to maintain control and reach some common ground to make everybody happy, which isn't so easy with, you know, infants, toddlers, little kids as they grow up. So I thought that's what naturally brought me into this world. And so as adults, so many people just cannot communicate effectively, and that is what causes some of these conflicts in the first place. So Carl,
let me read an attendance code first.
Oh, okay.
So the first attendance code, and there'll be two, is 9123. 9123. Okay, so now you can go ahead, Felicia.
Okay, so we're going to start with our first skit, which is demonstrating bad negotiation. All right, and this is just a simple question that comes up probably in every household across America or the world, which is, what are we having for dinner? What do you want for dinner? Okay, so watch what happens.
And I think we should say that we're just some generic couple out there, you and I, in this particular
Okay.
thing. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so what do you want for dinner?
I don't know. What do you want?
I don't know.
You want chicken?
Nah,
How about burgers?
no,
Shrimp?
no, you know I can't have that.
Oh, right. What about pasta?
No, you want me to get fat?
Okay, what will you have?
Something that's not toxic?
Like what?
I don't know.
I can't deal with this. I'm just going to get takeout for us.
From where?
I don't know. What are you in the mood for?
I don't care. It's up to you.
No, you do care. That's why I'm asking.
Why are you being so difficult? Just pick a place.
I'm being difficult? You're the one that's impossible.
Me? How am I impossible? You're the one that's impossible.
Because we both know it's never up to me. You'll just veto whatever I say anyway. So just tell me what you want to have.
Pick a place and I'll tell you what I want.
Fine. We're going to get Chinese.
Really? You pick salty Chinese food of all things?
Okay, then let's do Greek then.
You don't even like Greek.
I know, but you do. And then I won't have to hear you complaining.
Me complain? That's pretty funny from a guy that complains about every single restaurant we go to.
Where are you getting that from? I like every place.
Oh yeah? You like the Thai Palace?
There was a hair in my Thai food, whatever that was, Pai Tad.
Yeah, and the Mexican place?
The chicken in my enchilada was so undercooked, it was practically bloody raw.
And the steakhouse?
They charged $50 for a steak the size of one of my golf balls.
Now do you see why you have to pick the place? You're impossible.
I'm not impossible. I'll go anywhere.
You're just saying you'll go anywhere to make me look unreasonable when you literally have a problem with every place in town.
Whatever you say, Felicia.
Why don't we just eat something here?
Because it's too late to first start cooking now. So now that we've spent this time arguing about it.
So you won't eat here?
Fine. You know what? We will eat here. I'm going to have a bowl of cereal.
Whatever.
Wow. You've been taping a lot of people at home, I think.
Yes, we did 1,000 surveys and that came up 999 times.
Yeah, I think so. So that's certainly not pleasant. So
No.
what are you demonstrating here?
All right, I'll start off. We're demonstrating that we are not engaging in respectful negotiation or using constructive dialogue in any means. We were argumentative and confrontational, and even a bit combative. Both of us, I think, had a pretty bad attitude here, and we were very negative. So I just said no. I didn't explain my reasons, and he didn't care to explore my concerns. So I think, he didn't ask any follow-up questions, so he never asked why or why not, to understand the interests underlying my positions, like we were talking about in business cases. And the lesson here for future relationships, especially, it's important to probe the other person's interests and acknowledge them, consider their feelings, pay attention to their responses, and avoid the explosive reactions. So in this case, our couple here could have used a relationship facilitator.
I would just also add, Carl, before you get to that, I think one of the things that came out also very quickly is personal attacks. And I think when you start negotiating with somebody, once it becomes personal, then it kind of goes into a whole different direction. And I think that I wanted to make sure that that is something that we're highlighting in bad negotiation is personal attacks. And there were some real subtle digs. Obviously, we have a history with each other, as a lot of couples do, and there could be a lot of underlying emotions in there, but it does become personal. Very often I find in negotiating, when things get into like a logger jam, becomes personal very quickly. And that's really takes it in a whole different direction.
Right. So you could see where I took it as a personal affront. When he mentioned Chinese food, I used the word toxic. I sent the message, you don't care about me, what I need, and in fact, you're trying to poison me. So how does he respond to that? I can't deal with this. Let's just do takeout, name calling. You're being impossible. So another affront. So it got extremely personal.
Okay. So other than Lawrence being a typical husband.
Well, we didn't say
And
husband.
Felicia
We just said,
I was playing the role of the wife.
Very typical. I'm going to get killed for this, but absolutely typical. So are you saying that bad communications is what doesn't causes difficulty in mediation, or is that what gets them to the point where they have to mediate?
Both.
Well, both. And in this case, just like in so many other situations, you've got people who have a history between them. So I'm sorry, I hope somebody gets that here. Thank you. All right, so you've got, before we even start with the what's for dinner, which turned into, a major saga here, we had some bad feelings and some negative assumptions, some preconceived notions. And that exists very often in real life. That's what you've got between parties in a divorce, in workplace disputes, people who've been in the office together, disagreements between business partners, siblings in a contested trust and estate case. So this is a typical situation where the parties know how to get a rise out of the other person. They know how to hurt them and offend them, and they use that in negotiation to get what they want, not understanding that that is the wrong way to go. And that's what happened here.
Okay. And will a negotiator be dealing with those parties in a certain way to get through what they are sort of saying but not saying, to get to a resolution? Is that part of your role?
Yeah, in fact, I was just going to touch on that, Carl, because it ties into, we've talked about negotiating from strength, but you can also say facilitating from strength, right? As a mediator, and recognizing, like you said, is it too late? Maybe this couple, if it's a divorce mediation, right? Or a business relationship that broke apart in a civil mediation, there hasn't been good communication for years, maybe decades, right? The mediation is not going to solve that communication problem, right? From all that history. So it's a good mediator or facilitator is going to be perfectly aware that that is a potential boiling lid, that can come up at any time, because there is such a history of emotions that it really is to negotiate, to facilitate from strength, is being aware that, bringing that to the party's attention. Look, I recognize there is a lot of history between the two of you that can bubble up at any time, and that you have to, let's get an agreement. Almost, can we agree that we're going to defer from personal attacks, that we're going to stay focused on the objective criteria that we're trying to get to, because it's in both of your interests. You both want to be out of this, right? And you both want to not go through litigation. So it's just a good way of staying in control of the mediation, to be aware of this and to make sure that when it does bubble up, or if it looks like it's bubbling up, to be driving home that point that this is not the place that we're going to resolve 20 years or 10 years or 5 years of emotional pain that you both are going through. Because let's put it out there. That's the 8,000. You're both in a lot of pain and frustration, and there's a lot of hurt feelings. We're going to defer, and we're going to have to compartmentalize that so that we can hammer out this agreement. Do you both agree to that? I would want a yes from both parties on that. Yes. And that could be a business relationship. Yes. We're going to put that aside so we can work this out. That's what we're agreeing to do. And then I think you kind of deal with it, like that.
And
that's facilitating from strength.
Yeah, another way of doing that also is at the very beginning, when you set your ground rules at a mediation, is you want to let them know that there will be no offensive or personal attacks. Everybody keep their voice down, and that, it's a friendly environment, and you can refer back to that if they stray from that. So you set that out up front, like, here's what we're doing today. This is a no pressure situation, different forum than the courtroom, where we're working together, and we want everybody to be on the same page. So that helps to go back. Why don't we?
No, I think we're going to have to.
I want to get into our good negotiation.
No, we don't have time for that one. So
yes, we do. It's 2 minutes.
No, we don't. We're going to circle back to it if we have time, because we have 15 minutes, and I want people to have an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, because I see chats, I haven't read them. But so if anyone wants to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will allow you to talk. And if no one raises their hand, then we'll continue on. Anyone want to ask I see 2 hands raised. Where are they? Aha, Anju.
Hi, Anju.
Hey, so nice job. So the issue of ground rules and you as the mom saying you have to behave, at what point does that change the dynamic of the room with you making these rules that people have to obey? What if they have a way of talking to each other and they don't mind the rudeness, but you're offended by it? Why should it matter whether you're offended by their language?
It's not a question of offended. I always go back to my standard is this productive? And sometimes it is productive for people to, if like that's the way about them, where they argue, they bicker, and then they get to the heart of the matter. But if they can't get there because they're too busy, stabbing at each other, that's not productive. So that's really the word that I use. I want to have a meaningful mediation where I can move people along in the right direction. And if they got bogged down in fighting, that's not going to work for anybody. So,
okay. So
having that, so it's not about me, it's about them. So if
if they have language that you might think is rude, but they're making progress,
that's fine with me.
and if they want to call each other a jerk, you'll leave them alone. Or you never understood math, as an example, but them moving along, you'll leave them alone.
Well, I might throw in there, remember what we talked about, try to refrain from name calling or something, like move along. I'm not going to make a big deal about it if they're being productive. It's when people really, truly offend other people and you see their body language, they stiffen up, they might get up to leave. Once you do this long enough, you see everything.
Thanks, Felicia.
Thanks,
Lawrence, you have any different view on that?
It's not different. I would say if we had a list of 10 items and, it was like, you're a jerk. Okay. I think you're a schmuck. Okay. I'll agree to item 1. Okay. Number 2, you're a jerk. You're a schmuck. We'll agree to item 2. Well, of course, then I wouldn't care that they were calling them names if you're moving down your list and everybody's in agreement. But I think realistically, Anju, that's not how it's going to work. When you start having personal attacks, you're just not going to be productive. I think that's common sense.
Okay, so I'm not talking really about personal attacks, but everybody has a different way or politeness of talking to each other. And I'm just wondering, and this is a whole session that we don't need to do, but just because you have a certain standard of politeness, do you expect that the client should speak in your, based on your perspective on politeness?
Well, to answer your question, I'm going to try to set the tone at the very beginning. Look, we're not going to do any personal attacks. We're not going to be insulting each other. If I do hear personal attacks, my job, my role as a mediator, quite frankly, is to sort of like try to keep that to a minimum, if nothing. And I'm going to do that and referee on both sides if I hear that. But I'm asking you both to agree to refrain from personal attacks so we can stay focused. If you get them to agree to that and then they start personally attacking each other, I might a couple of times say, hey, look, we'd agreed, right? No personal attacks, answer the question out, So I think that's the way I would do it. I do want to have a mediation where we're not sitting around insulting and cursing each other. So yeah, that is my standard. And I'm going to ask them to be accountable to that. And if they can't, odds are it's not going to be a productive session. It's just common sense. It will not be if they start attacking each other. If somebody curses a little bit here or there, I'm a big boy, I can handle a curse, but I'm just saying, in general, we're talking about, I think, controlling personal attacks, and that's what I would try to do.
Okay. Susan, you have your hand up. If you unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. It was excellent, by the way. The one underlying thing, and this isn't my question, it was just my own observation in some negotiations, is you can be, well, I don't care. It's very passively aggressive. You may not be calling each other names, you may not be using curse words, but it's just as aggressive as throwing a vase.
Exactly. Which is why, if we did have those 2 minutes, we wanted to demonstrate the good negotiation so you can see how we handled the same exact situation, but in a constructive fashion.
The courts require negotiation. So you have a couple who are required to go negotiation. I mean, that goes against the tenet of negotiation or mediation, right? Both parties are wanting to do it. Both parties, are willing to work. And now you have this couple, they don't want to do it. They don't want to work. How do you get them to a place where they will listen to one another?
Well, I think in any mediation, as a mediator, you have to make an assessment, right? After a while, if it becomes obvious to you as the mediator, if they're on a court-appointed mediation that they're just there for obligatory purposes, they may very well not want to resolve it. Their attorney, if they're represented by counsel, they may not even have, the counsel may just say, we're just going to go through this mediation process, but we're not going to actually settle the case. You can get a feel as a mediator whether or not this is a waste of time or it's actually beneficial after a period of time. And you may have to say to a party, say, look, I'm getting a feeling that, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you both want to resolve this? Would you like to resolve this? Because I'm getting a feeling, based on my experience, I've done this with a lot of people, I'm getting a feeling that you don't really seem like you really want to work out something. Now, I hope that's not the case, but I'm getting to feel that. We've been doing this for 2 hours, or we've been doing this for an hour and a half, and there hasn't been anything that you've really agreed on. So this is on you. Again, mediation, you have to set the tone. Mediation is not arbitration. I'm not making a decision who's right or wrong. I'm putting the burden on you. You have to come up with an agreement. You have to decide you want to work something out. So the burden shifts to the parties. And when you make that expectation known at the beginning that you're there to help, you're there to facilitate, I'm going to do everything I can to help this, but you have the burden in mediation to work this out. So do you want to work this out? You got to get frank at a certain period of time. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and spend 5 hours, you're wasting your time and everybody's time. So if they're not there to really work it out, then you might have to end the mediation process. You don't get it done because they don't want to work it out. If they don't want to work it out, they're not going to work it out. If they do.
Thank you, Lawrence. I'm going to echo that because that works for every type of case, not just matrimonial situations, but civil cases as well. So as a mediator, sometimes if you see that, they're trying to use it for information gathering and, they're not really being forthright, I'll say to them, do you want to resolve this case today? What are you looking to achieve from this mediation? What do you want to get out of this? And sometimes you just have to say that right out. And if you can't get them to focus on, on the issues and to have any movement at all, then there's your answer.
So you're not afraid of
kind of like
terminating.
give it up, but you don't take it as a mediator that it's your problem.
Well, you don't want to waste anybody's time either. So that's why you've got to get the intention of the parties. So you've got to understand what they're looking for. Right. So mediation is a voluntary process. So if they're not engaging, what are you supposed to do?
You're a mediator, not a miracle worker.
Right. You need their active participation in order to resolve the case. You can't do it by yourself.
So I have to read a second code. The second code is 2735. 2735. Now, let me ask you, Felicia and Lawrence. You've talked about what good mediators should be doing, or negotiators. What are some of the things that you see bad negotiators doing?
I can jump.
Do we have enough time for that? We only have 4 minutes left.
Well, make two apiece.
I'll give you a quick one, just a quick one.
Okay.
The worst thing a mediator could do is not appear neutral, right? I would just equate that to an umpire who's calling balls and strikes, and he's calling it in favor of one team and not the other. You've got to be neutral. So I think the first thing I would say is a bad mediator is going to look like he's not or she's not neutral. That would be that's the first thing that jumped out at me. And then the other thing I might add to that is just losing your cool as a mediator, right? Being frustrated and angry and raising your voice. That's not the role of a mediator. So the role of a mediator is to be that, calm presence in the room, the adult in the room sometimes, right? And be neutral at all times. And one last thing is just making sure that both parties give ample opportunity to speak. If you're going to let them get it out, give them the chance of getting out. A bad mediator doesn't allow them maybe to get it out, what they need to say to clear the air so that they can start to negotiate and do the deal. Go ahead, Felicia.
I was going to say that mediators need to have that positive attitude that they bring into the room, that yes, this case can settle, and they are the ones who are centered and creative. They are the role model for the room. So if you have a mediator who has a negative attitude, then that just permeates the room and it makes it way more difficult to resolve the case. Mediators, of course, need to obey by the cardinal rules of confidentiality, and never betray a trust. That is so, so important. You work so hard to build a rapport. One major mistake that mediators do, I've heard, is people say, "Oh, I just get right to it. I don't have any preamble. I don't have a preliminary conference call with the parties first. No small talk." And all of that is so important in building your relationship with the parties. So I don't care if you're talking about who's going to win the Super Bowl, or you love or you hate the snow, whatever it is, that is so important because we're people. And I mentioned the human factors before, so you can't lose sight of the fact that we're humans. And, as I said, we only had a couple of minutes left, but you've got to, as a mediator, be able to manage the emotions in the room. Unless you let that person tell their story, you're not going to be able to have them reevaluate their case and move them towards anybody's position, whether yours as a negotiator or the other side's if you're mediating. So you can't lose sight of that fact. You've always got to be letting the parties speak, make sure there's some active listening going on there, building that rapport. And you gotta have empathy, so if you come across as a mediator where you just don't care, that shows. So never lose sight of letting the parties tell their story, having that rapport building and empathy.
Thank you very much.
Persevere, don't give up. Don't be the mediator that just immediately throws in the towel. Try something else, change the focus, change the topic, take a break, get food, do something, but don't give up.
All right. Well, I want to thank both of you very much. Let me talk about, for just a couple minutes, about what's coming up. This was the 5th of 7 CLE webinars. The next one is going to be, well, it was supposed to be after COVID, workplace disputes. And that's been replaced by a program looking at very specific parenting issues. So for example, parenting plans when the parties live very far apart. Mediating the parenting plans when parents have cultural conflicts, or managing the review attorney who negates the mediation agreement. So these are very specific points that come up a lot of times, and how to deal with those in a mediation. The next one after that, and the last one, is on April 5th, and it's mediating divorces involving children with autism special needs. And Larry Jones will be presenting on that one.
Earl, can I just ask you, I just was looking at the Q&As, and the last couple of questions are people wanted to see that good negotiation, which does take 2 minutes. I don't know if we're allowed to go over by 2 minutes.
Well,
So
again, let me just finish this and then we can go do it.
sorry.
Where was I? Okay. We will be doing this series again next year, or later this year. Probably we'll have 9 programs rather than 7. And I frequently request people to send ideas for programs. That's really the hardest thing to do. I ask a lot of times, and I almost never get an idea from anyone. Now, if you watch this program or this series of programs, can't you take 5 or 10 minutes, sit down and think about, gee, I have something that, what would be interesting to people to have a program on? I really request you to spend 5 minutes. Just do that and send me an idea, because that's the hardest part, is coming up with things that will be of interest to, you know, our membership.
That's actually a good idea for a webinar, Carl. We can have a webinar on how to come up with good ideas for a webinar.
Yes, and you can yell and scream because I control that. Anyway, so that's that. And I also want to give a plug to the 2-part cultural competency program that's going to be, the first part is on February 16th. For lawyers, you earn these special ethics credits. And for
Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes. And for non-attorneys, you're just going to learn a lot of stuff about cultural competency. It's very important. That's the first one, is a 2-part series, and the second one is in March sometime. So with that, anyone who wants to depart may depart. And Felicia, who is about the most persistent person I've ever known, was now going to get an opportunity to show us what good communication is like. Okay.
Thank you. I just want to say the second part of the cultural competency program is March 9th. That's the civil one. The first one in February is the family one.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So ready, Lawrence?
All right. So this is an example of good negotiation. Go ahead, Felicia.
Okay. So same question. What do you want for dinner?
I don't know. What are you thinking of, sweetheart?
I don't really have anything in mind. How about chicken?
No, thanks. We've had chicken a lot lately. Maybe hamburgers?
It's kind of late to have something that heavy now. We could do shrimp.
Remember, I had an allergic reaction to the last time that we had shrimp?
Oh, right. Yeah, you did. Sorry, I forgot about that. What about pasta? That's pretty bland.
Too many carbs. I never worked out today.
Good point. Me neither.
You want to do takeout?
Sure.
Do you have any preference?
Not really. What are your top choices?
Well, I'd like to try that new Italian restaurant.
Oh, the one near the harbor? Me too, but I heard that they always have a long wait, so we won't get to eat until really late tonight.
Good point. How about Chinese food?
I'd love to have Chinese, but it's too salty for me. Want to do Greek?
You know, Greek's not my favorite, but I'm sure if you want it, I could probably find something on the menu.
No, let's find something that you like too. Mexican?
Do you remember the last time we did Mexican? They forgot, I think, to cook my chicken.
Well, at least there was no hair in your food.
Good point. You didn't hear me suggest the Thai Palace, did you?
Well, I wish the steakhouse wasn't so expensive. I'll just have to wait until I win Powerball to go back there.
Are you sure there's nothing we can't do right here at the house? You know, I know it's getting late, but if we both work at it together, we probably could whip something up.
Nothing's jumping out.
Well, tell me, what are you in the mood for? You want something savory, something cheesy? What's catching your fancy?
Something healthy?
Healthy? Okay. What do you have in mind?
I don't know. We're out of fresh veggies.
Isn't there a package of frozen vegetables in the freezer?
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Okay. What about if I start up doing a stir fry and then maybe add some quinoa to it? We probably could, you know, crank that out pretty quickly.
Sounds perfect. Thanks, Lawrence.
You're welcome, doll.
Okay.
Okay, here's my reaction. You're an annoying couple. You really are annoying.
No, we're
Very
actually
picky.
we're actually
The
engaged.
couple I have ever seen. Just put something on the table and say, eat it. Anyway, thank you.
But you saw just in that last example how smooth and simple and easy it seemed to be when we were both working towards that same end goal and engaging in a constructive dialogue.
Yeah, right.
We were both married less than a year.
Yeah, I think so.
And we're still on our honeymoon.
Okay, well, thank you very much. It was a good time. And we'll see everyone next week on Monday, which is the, what is it? It is
8th.
mock civil mediation session at 12 o'clock as usual. And I'll send out an announcement about it today. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Carl.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you very much, Carl, and thanks to our audience.